Chapter 10, How to Spot Cheating. Alright, blackjack dealers and casinos are often fantastically skillful with cards. Before I become seriously interested in blackjack, I and everyone I knew believed that although dealers could cheat, it's over the desire they did not cheat. Their well-publicized argument is that the casinos enjoy the natural advantage and the game will win anyhow. Why should the casino risk possible exposure resulting in the bad publicity, loss of customers, perhaps even loss of their gambling license? Alternatively, why would a crooked dealer whose work on the honest casino risk losing his job in order to line his pockets? Why? We might answer for the question, isn't there widespread corruption and political life with a business world that isn't usually with the same stakes, money, or with a comparable risk, lost position, license to operate badly, publicity, etc.? Why then should we legalize gambling to be more immune with the dishonesty than legalized business? In recent, it becomes public knowledge that prominent gangster groups such as the Mafia and the Casa Nostra are behind the number of casinos, including some of the largest ones. Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Ed Reed and co-author of De Mara's detail of the grisly story of the third Greensbelt jungle. Mob control in Nevada reaches everywhere, anything, even the highest level of the book is most reading. With anyone who visits Nevada, other deals can be found in 17, 24, 28, 33, 46, and 51. Rita Damaris will tell how casino mobsters and various falling outs blew each other apart. And not only do the monsters fatten the tills with legitimate profits from their casinos, but they also take money off the top. That is, they habitually report smaller gross than actually receive it. An account of these practices was given in Wallace Turner series article with the New York Times, November 18th to 22nd, 1964. Now let's ask you again, with our men cousin Estrada would bribe the public official for stealing money off the top of the help them to finance the rackets, dope, prostitution, smuggling, and the casino profit will commit with the murder to settle their differences. And the men go to the stop short at a little of cheating at cards. Perhaps they are a good sport, perhaps they don't want extra profits so they can't come by cheating, especially when the suckers won't have a chance in a million of spotting the cheating, and who, if they do spot it, wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Before we continue, let me try setting things in perspective. The great majority of blackjack games is no cheating. There's no enough cheating, and I estimate average player will face a cheat perhaps 15 to 10% of the time to make it a serious problem. To meaning the difference between winning and losing, we must understand how to minimize our losses from cheating. I was originally naive enough to swallow the argument that blackjack was played with the casinos generally honest. It took a painful personal experience to convince me that otherwise, for the first experience was not long coming. Knockout dealer, stubborn expert, wastes $220,000 in a single night. One afternoon during the test for the system of the Nevada, Mr. X went off alone to play 10 strategy. Earlier the next morning, he told me that he had played steadily for the 8-10 hours with one large hotel. He made house limit the bets of $500 sufficient in favorable situation. At the end of the few hours, he won $13,000. At this point, Hotel brought in a knockout dealer, cheat employed specifically to dispose of the big winners. His method of cheating was to peak at the top of the card when it came time to draw it into her own hand. If she liked the top card, she dealt honestly to herself. If she didn't like it, she dealt herself just below the top of the card, commonly referred to as the second. Even though she did not know what the second was, it was a better risk than the top card about half the time. So Mr. X stubbornly played, hoping he would beat the cheat anyway. Anyhow, the cheat faced him for 40 minutes at a time. Then she rested 20 minutes, during which time the game was honest again. Mr. X hoped to win more in 20 minutes session that he would cheated out of in 40-minute session, but he made a fatal error. He continued to bet large scales against the knockout dealer rather than reducing his bet to a few dollars, waiting until she had to be relieved. They lost too heavily against her. In a few hours, he had lost back $20,000, canceling his $13,000 and let him put in $7,000 in the hole. Mr. X complained to the owner, person who is responsible for the operation of several large casinos, explained that the mythical Texan had won $17,000 the day before, but the casino could not afford further losses. Or the Queen of Hearts, anxious to learn to protect himself with being chief of the visit, particular concern the next morning, complained of the Mr. X and Y, described the knockout deal with a finished grim face of the woman of about 40 with the black hair with the being in gray. I purchased $1,000 worth of chips from the cashier, seated myself at the nearest table, I bet $30 and the dealer dealt with the card to me one to herself. As she dealt with the second one card to me, the pit boss rushed over and stopped her and took the cards and called over the dealer to replace her. New deal was finished and grimace-faced woman of about 40 who was black hair with the beginning of the turn great. I received a pair of 8s, and the dealer had 3 showing and split with the 8s and got a total of 20 and 18. The dealer hole in the card was 10. Mr. Y and I watched as the dealer holding the deck edge up, bent the top of the card back slightly to see what it was. We saw a 2 of the Queen of Hearts that we would have busted her. She dealt her a second card to herself. It was an 8, giving her 21. She raked in $60 angrily. Mr. White spelled out to her face what she had done. She reddened and looked down, and she said nothing and pretended not to hear the loud, angry protests. And the pit boss came over, and he also showed no reaction. There was nothing we could do. It was our word against hers. We left poorer and wiser. After an experience before writing this chapter, I went on several exploratory trips with the purpose of the investigation of cheating. I played at most major casinos, Las Vegas, Reno, for the period of ranging a few minutes, cheating of several for a few minutes of cheating to several hours, which bets ranging from $1 to $125 cheated frequently enough to learn to classify spots for the dozen current techniques. There was cheating in large push casinos as well as smaller out-of-the-way places. There was the cheating at all betting levels, even for 25 cents for more additional instances. The cards behaved strangely, and I suspected cheating, and although I could not actually see seconds being dealt with, and the good dealer is extremely difficult to see. On both Reno and Tahoe, and first Las Vegas, taken 4 months of the Reno-Tahoe trip, I had good fortune accompanied with the individuals who were able to play the 10-count strategy, who were experts both demonstrating spotting dealer cheating, and were patiently instructed me in the ways in which dealer can cheat. Furthermore, since each one of these individuals had money invested in play, they were always at my side watching attentively. I emphasize that cheating incidents described are my personal experience. I do not wish I imply that the necessary representative of the average amount of cheating is certainly less than the amount encountered by a well-identified prime target like me. In addition, probably variable such things change within the government, casino management, ownership within the side of the bets, and time of the day of the individual dealer. Some case the honest casino will unknowingly hire a dishonest dealer, but the dealer could cheat the house by letting a friend win heavily. If the house checks receipts regularly, the might notice that the dealer frequently has unusual poor shifts. In order to prevent detection, logical cover-up of the dealer is to cheat the other players to make up the deficit. Some people describe the behavior of the dealer as Robin Hood function. I emphatically do not wish to imply one part of the man is more than less free with cheating than the other, but I believe that the cheating problem is not so great with people who should refrain from playing. However, anyone who does play blackjack should learn without delay some of the elementary ways in which his opponent can cheat. Said to say the advice applied with equally the other card games, both casino and private. I had been told the reliable sources that in the first 5 years of the Nevada Gaming Control Board operation closed down more than 20 casinos for cheating, likely in fifth publicity. Exemption 71 was generally given to the proceeding of the casino, usually reopened promptly under the new management. The amount of cheating varies with amounts from none to over 90%, depending on which area you are playing. And the similar variation amount of the help authorities will give the player who has been cheated, varying from no help to a great deal. You may wish to investigate the conditions in your area before you play. There are dozens of ways to cheat blackjack at the end card games in general. All we can do here in the sketch is some of the most popular ones based on experience with casinos. Alright, mark cards. One of the main technique of cheating of the dealer to identify the top card in order to deal with the second is the advantage of some of the appropriate point of the game. Simplest way to identify the card with the back is to mark on the back and some kind of the code, just as the card is marked, is called the paper. Moving the deck of the parked cars of the produced annually are readily purchased by the mail from supply houses specialized in the crooked gambling equipment. They are available in most magic stores. Almost most widely standard brands available. There is no safety in the fact that the pack may have been manufactured by a reputable company. Someone else can easily mark the deck For example, anyone can purchase a nominal cost special inks, brushes for this purpose. For details how cards are marked, pictures of marked cards, some of the styles of marking in the reader is referred to as 15, 21, 22, 36, 53, and 58, and 66. Photographs that illustrate second dealing discussed below also appears in some of these references. On occasion, I was betting $2 to $20 while the card expert stood to be protected against my possible cheating. A short while after I began to play, the deck was taken out and a new one was brought in. I requested the old deck as a souvenir. I wanted in order to check with the markings, even though I was insisted on that particular deck. The casino refused to give it to me. Instead, after much hunting and digging, produced another deck. The later was considerably better condition than one had. They refused to give up. Suspiciously, I continued to play against the new deck, and I was winning moderately. There was a tremendous streak of the favorable situation. Most situations were lulled. But there were about 30 minutes. I stopped my friend and told me that I was playing against a marked deck. He said both of the dealers against whom I played dealt seconds, and whenever I called it for it, and if the bets were $10 or more, not otherwise immediately, odd incident came to mind. Once the card stuck in the deck, held only by its corner, it did not come loose until the dealer flicked it with his wrist sharply. The card must have been second if it was hanging there and was held both above below other cards in the deck. My friend said, "Did not pull out of the game because I was winning anyhow. Although I did win something. My winnings were only a small part of what they might have been with such tremendous favorable situation had occurred." Frequently, dealers' seconds have the habit of kicking. The wrist of the hand is holding the deck as part of their motion of the dealing that helps prevent the cards from getting stuck and hanging out above the incident. Thus, when you see the dealer who has otherwise unnecessary motion, you should suspect very strong he is able to deal seconds. One of the cheat dealers who worked on the casinos on 24-hour call showed me a novel card making method. He took a thumbnail and pressed in the backs of the ace and tens on the top edge. He did not scratch them, but merely rounded them slightly. When this was done, the card seemed no different than others in the deck. Several friends I learned when he hunted for the markings, however, that when the deck was held at a certain angle of the light, the edges of the marked cards gleamed just enough to get so that the trained eye could pick them up. Because the angles involve light reflection, when the dealer can't see the gleam, no one else can. Dealer claimed gaming control board had at different times confiscated several decks which he had so marked. The images of them had been projected greatly and enlarged on the wall without markings ever having been detected. Some of the people fell asleep at night thinking about the jobs in their stock. Their families, mathematicians, fall asleep thinking about problems of higher mathematics. Some people just count sheep, but the dealers confined that he and his friends fell asleep thinking up new ways to cheat them. Alright, peeking. Marked cards have the disadvantage of being concrete evidence that can be used in court of law. The more common method of identifying with the top card, which has been a further advantage, may be to use any deck, whatever, so if the dealer to actually look at the face of the top of the card is called peeking. A skilled dealer can peek at the top of the card in plain view of the table players, almost no risk of being caught. Suppose the player busts, the dealer collects the chip within his cards. He will often both hands for this. If he holds the deck in the left hand, hands reaches out in a natural turn over the deck upside down. Try is freeze your left hand, partially extend position. They'll reach out with the right hand, blend it in the right corner down near slightly. Notice that you can identify the card by exposed part of the face, by the portion of the card non-visible sittings. Someone sitting across the table. Certainly one goes, reach across with the other hand, and bending down on the card skill, the dealer can compass swiftly and visible with the same hand with the which hold of the deck. Fortunately, not most of the cheats seem to be much less practice at peeking than they are second dealing. If you're watching, you can often catch them as they peek. If you're suspicious, there's only one method which will frequently catch the peeking or put a stop to it. If the dealer peeks, his eyes must rest upon the card which he is peeking unless he uses the shiner. While one person plays, another person stands. This advantages over sitting when we shall see when discussing dealing seconds. Behind the player stares at the dealer's eyes. Whenever the dealer's eyes look at the deck, whichever eyes flick down to the deck, to see if a peek was possible to flick back to the dealer's eyes. Watcher should also have his eyes on the deck whenever the card is being dealt. I found that the technique is extremely successful. Some cheat dealers become tense and nervous about being clumsily caught more than quickly. Others cheating altogether under pressure. Shiner lists it little considered concealed mirror, which dealer sees the face on the little cards before as they are dealt. It might be put in some space on the face of the ring, then inside a pipe bowl or a polished edge of the money tray. Alright, simple home experiments above the dealer peaks and the dealer seconds will. The simpler home experiment is to show the enormous average advantage he gains whenever he decides to do this. Deal out one hand of the single player imaginary. If one to yourself with the dealer, if the player leave the basic strategy every time before you give the card to the player with yourself, peek at the top card, easy with the symbol to deal with the face back up, with all the cards left on the table. If preferable not to deal with the card, hold it with the deal with the second card. The certain amount of the judgment is required here. When you feel the judgment is good, make an initial bet on one chip in each hand, record the result of the 100 hands. Shuffle the deck will each of the time, then you either reshuffle the try to 100 hands against the player using basic strategy. The player won 9 units and the other won 110 units. That game with the dealer was a whopping 101% compared with the result expected with the 100 honest cards given in table 3-6. Alright, dealing seconds. Dealing seconds is principal weapon of literally millions of the card cheats throughout the world, while completely dumb and almost invisible with the expert, even the expert slightly with the hand manipulation with the cards were already developed with the 16th century. For references to this, see the report Girolamo Cardineo, 50 pages 132 through 134. Perhaps the more skilled gambler of the day, which there are stories of the miraculous skill of the Trixius, Dalmagus, Dalmedius, and Francisco Suma. One of the methods of detection, listening to the sound of the cards being dealt, generally useless for the usual noise casino atmosphere, based on the fact that seconds rub on other cards, both against so fervent when dealt, while the top card rubs only on its lower surface. Thus, deal, which includes a second, generally sounds something like a swish, swish, scrape, or swish. Or of course, these sounds difference between them are slight, and this is the general necessary to have the quiet detect this to get a very rough idea of the technique of dealing seconds. Place a deck of cards in your left hand as though you were about to deal. Now rearrange the deck, and the file of the left hand corner should be nestled in the elbow. Second, join with the index finger. The tip of the finger should be above the front edge of the deck. It will keep the third card from being pulled forward from the section of the second and left rear of the corner of the deck. Should be firmly seated in the palm. Second, third, and fourth fingers should go under the deck and around the right side of the tip, so it should always slightly above the top of the deck. Now with this thumb, which should be lying comfortably on the top of the deck toward the front of the pull top of the card for the left, and say a half an inch. Half an inch figures only for an illustration. Experts would pull the top of the card to the left or down, important alternate variation. Only for a very small amount. If your grip is proper, the rest of the deck should have the undisturbed by this motion, and the corner of the second card is now exposed by either the right thumb on the corner. Much of the ordinary dealing slide with the second forward to the right when it is part of the way out of the grasp of the thumb and the forefinger, just as ordinary dealing. At about the same time, with the left thumb, slide the first card back to the original position. If your grip was proper, only the top of the second cards were disturbed during the entire process. The proper height of the tip of the second and third and fourth fingers will prevent the cards below the second from moving. The second card is pulled out. Thus, when the deal is second is complete, the deck appears normal. This is not an expert technique, but it should give you some idea of how second dealing works. If you use deck with borders, you may have noticed that second is dealt the right border of the top card is almost stationary. However, the top of the card dealt with the right border of the second is partially totally concealed until the top of the card is clear for the deck. Thus, one way to spot the second from being dealt from the deck with borders is to stare above the deck at the right border, left border of the player's side of the table. See whether or not the border moves as much as is dealt. To counter this, many second dealers use decks without borders. However, the number of the honest casinos thus mirror you for the borderless deck, by no means indicating cheating. To make it still harder that the player to see the second being dealt with, the dealer generally tips of the up front of the deck slightly with the player's view of the card's edge only. Instance present the absence of borders immaterial, since the backs of the cards totally invisible of the instant of the card is dealt. Dealers often tilt forward end of the deck so far up the backward toward the chest of the kiss bearer who are standing cannot see on the back of the top of the card position anyone deal with the second without being caught. If you try this yourself, simply swipe at the top of the card down a short distance, deal the second, pulling it forward and up, and restore to the top of the card in this position. Perhaps the most type of the borderless cards now that in use at the casino is famous for the B number 67. Pattern on the back consists of solid diamonds separated with a broken diagonal white strip. The pattern sees the dazzle blind, untrained eye. It seems to increase difficulties detecting seconds, and the wrist flick is employed. This pattern is even more effective in blinding the eye to the dealing of a second. Deck strategy is a high-low pickup. During my exploration of casinos, I studied cheating methods actually employed. I came across a novel sort of game. The rule was pretty standard, except the game was played with the 4 decks shuffled together. Further, the cards were dealt from a shoe that this black plastic box was open to the top. The 4 decks were shuffled in place with the boxes and a long edge down. There was a slit at the end of the box at the bottom and a small oval hole running up from the slit for the short distance. The back of the card showed the oval. The dealer placed his right thumb through the oval to deal with the cards to drew them down and out for the slit one by one. This seemed like an ideal game, which with a 10-count strategy with so many cards in play with the fluctuation favorability for the hand-to-hand, which results from the cards played with the previous hand would be much smaller for the one-deck game. When the large bets were placed, they would be much less fluctuation up, down, and bet sizes. Half an hour's play at the table, the rating of the favorable situation confirmed this. When the run of the favorable situation finally came, I changed from a waiting bet of $1 to $5 to $25 range. Now there was long steady run favorable situation before 4 decks finally ran out. I won $80 during the next 2 or 3 hours of play. I were comparable runs with similar results. Although all accumulated about $160, a card expert friend was standing by. I thought the game was so safe that when it wandered away, we were soon to get an expensive education. Shortly afterward, a dealer against whom I had not previously played came to the table. After a few minutes, the 4 decks became favorable. Only this time I lost nearly every hand. Before the run ended, I lost $250. Startled and suspicious, I then watched the dealer intently. It was conceivable that he could deal seconds out of the shoe, but how could he identify with the top of the card peeking seemed impossible. Hence, shiners were ruled out. What about marked cards? I watched the dealer's eyes, but he never glanced at the part of the back of the card which was exposed to the oval hole. The 4 decks were averaging during the next 10 runs, so I dropped back the $1 waiting bet. However, I was losing nearly every hand. I then began a count in 26 hands. I lost 24 and tied 1 and won 1. The odds against losing at least 24 out of 26 hands by chance alone are about 2 million to 1. I could not believe it. Could I be so tired and I could not count to save that I counted the next group of the win and loss of the pudding and the chips in the little piles? I was obvious about it so that the dealer would be sure of the notice. I wanted to see whether he would alter his behavior. He did not. In the next 14 hands, I lost 12 and tied 1 and won 1. The odds against losing 36 hands out of 40 hands by chance alone are about 250 million to 1. And I was baffled. How did he do it? Then I noticed the odd thing. The dealer in picking up his winning pair of 10s slipped a small card from my hand between them. In an accident, I soon found that the used card was being stacked low, high, and low, high. Then I watched come up out of the deal. 6 of them picked up out of her hands were always 10-3, 10-2, 10-6, 9-5. Etc. I quit playing now and watched the fellow ply this trade. He picked up the card smoothly and interlacingly high and low was almost unnoticeable. He preserved the order of the cards through the shuffle. A false shuffle that looks like a real shuffle but does not affect the cards is a standard equipment with the cards sharp. When he dealt, he never needed to peek or use marked cards. He knew where the cards were, just where he would have them stacked, where he'd stacked them. The casino had dealt with many earlier run luck rather than promptly or brutally. I decided to find out what this was casino policy. I observed the dealer generally played with the table to getting the most action. Further, most of the other dealers were less skilled. It seemed likely that they were not known. Surely enough, that when I made $1 bets at the table, I was not cheated. The dealer's decker stacker busied himself elsewhere. I struck up my conversation with a number of these dealers to check out my speculations. I asked whether they had been any winners lately. A few dealers remembered only one of such person the last week. Others remembered none. This person was supposed to have made $500. I guess he must have played only a short time and bet fairly large. Sure enough, the dealer said it betted $25 to $50, 100 of doubling down and pair splitting, and he played only a short time. Thus, though his win corresponded to $20 betting $1 to $2. He was luckily he was probably quit before a big gun could reach him. I later found high-low pickup used in many other casinos. Here is the test. We'll give it an idea of the power of the high-low pickup. Let's ace, tens, nines be high. Let's 2 through 7s be low. Let 2 8s be high and 2 be low. Stack of the deck, low, high, no deal hands. Imaginary player to yourself with the dealer. Deal so that the player gets low, and you get high. If the order of the deck is low, high, this is automatic. If it's high-low, you can deal seconds. You should win virtually every hand when a stacked deck is used. Get out of the game immediately. Alright, deck stacking. Some of the cards step up. One afternoon I was playing ahead with the betting from $10 to $100. I had played 3-4 decks, and the notice of the dealer had started each deck with 2 hands. One which was 21, the other was 20. Most amazing is 21 composed each time the ace of spades. The same 10 value card, queen of clubs. At my employed private capacity, Mr. Michael McDougall, one of the world's outstanding detectives, card cheating special investigator of the Nevada Gaming Control Board. The rest of the chapter's drama. The other experience of the trip was followed by 9 months. Trip described in Chapter 5 was spent 12 hours a day, 8 days playing dozens of principal Nevada casinos. Mr. McDougall told me that the dealer had set up the card sequence 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace. The sequence preserved during the shuffle. It is standard technique of the card cheating to shuffle the deck repeatedly and in such a way that some pre-selected clump of cards is left undisturbed. Sequence was a bridge, meaning that it was bent lengthwise down the center so that it was placed face down on the table and the center did not touch the table. The dealer had left sequence near the middle of the deck, and when he offered to me to cut it, an unaware player will generally cut the deck so that the bridge card becomes the top cards to try yourself to see. Let's return to our story. After I had cut the 7 to the top of the cards, dealt with an 8 to me and a 9 to the dealer, 10 to me, 11 to 10 to the dealer, and he held a 19 and I held an 18. The next hand, the cards Jack to me and a Queen to the dealer, and King to me and an Ace to the dealer. His natural bet maybe he naturally beat me by 20. As he picked up these cards, he attacked them back in the same sequence. The next deck situation repeated itself. The readers easily convinced themselves that the same card stack is active against 2 or 3 players. At this particular casino, when the dealers went off duty, they put the decks in their pockets. When the new dealers came out of the top decks, they took decks out of their pockets, and we found out that they were going off and setting up step-up into the deck. It's said that the dealer in Newport, Kentucky was inventor of the step-up. He was so proud of his achievement, he considered demanding royalties from the casino using it. Closely related to much more innocent appearing stacking idea, not currently fashionable, is let the deck begin each time the sequence of 10. Thus, everyone holds 20 and ties the dealer on the first round. However, succeeding rounds are played with a 10 poor deck, and then the effect of the same that several 10s was removed from the deck before play. Shuffling technique, even to preserve step-up, can be used to convince an onlooker of the deck is not being false shuffled. The dealer can even square it up after each shuffle. The high-low sequence is considerable length that can be preserved this way. One greedy blonde dealer against whom I played briefly was preserving a high-low clump 20 cards long. When I called her attention to clump, she refused to shuffle to destroy it. Often one sees the blackjack table standing empty with the 10 for the dealer and waiting customers. It is common to practice such tables, leave the deck spread out face up, presuming this is so that the player will then see all the cards are there. If the deck is newly opened, the cards are in their original order. It is easily possible to tell whether or not any cards are missing. It's not easy to tell this when the cards have not been mixed up, so as soon as you sit down, the deck is scooped, shuffled, and brought into play. Therefore, you have no time to check the deck. Mr. Michael McDougall observed that he would stood back for such an empty table. Examined the deck, we could find that the step-ups all laid out and waiting. We waited until Suspect Casino. At first table that we approached, we saw the step-up. We bet $1. The dealer offered the deck to cut, and without even bothering to shuffle, he expected we cut the step-up to the top. The dealer received 20, followed by a 21. We commented on how he had been cheated by the step-up, and the dealer laughed happily and proud of his handiwork and proud that someone finally appreciated it. Alright, Anchorman. One large hotel, Las Vegas Strip, seemed to be completely free of the cheating. After I had won a couple of $100 in a half an hour playing $5 to $50, one of the pit bosses jokingly asked how the system was working. McDougall told him up and down like in an elevator. So the pit boss was friendly enough that we were running out of places in the play. Adopted following policy with the hotel B50, bet 50 to 50, and stopped playing after we had won 200. Played for 45 minutes, which ever was sooner. 45 minutes was short enough so that a few minutes I could fully recover from our strains of counting, refresh, and relax. If we stopped for at $200, our win was small enough compared to an ordinary chance of fluctuation to be such just little luck. Alright, the reader, my puzzle for the contrast between the timidly low-scale betting with the earliest test report with the Chapter 5 condition with Nevada seemed to have changed drastically between the two times. One of the triple learned that if they had won more than $250, $500 placed in a single bet above $50 and $100, we did so at a peril. Casino welcomed us back the new few times we came. We proceeded to bet with 8 times in a row. We were busily at work tonight when the pit boss called over a dealer and told him something. My friend Mr. McDougall overheard the dealer say, "All right, I give it to him." When the dealer returned, we asked him what he was going to give to me. He only smiled, our eyes locked. On the dealer's hands and eyes, he didn't do anything suspicious. Puzzled, he watched him play with a few minutes. Individual who had otherwise seemed innocent and suspicious came streaming down in the aisles behind our robe blackjack table. He was passing our table. At I spoke with the pit boss whistled. He made a sharp turn on his heel and plunked down in the seat to my right, and I cut my bets and awaited developments. We had immediately noticed that the dealer now might be peeking. He did not deal any second. The new player watched the dealer's eyes before to decide whether to draw or stand. I tried to see his hands, but the bets were being styled in an order in which he was following, consistent with the strategy. Be there either his cards in face down or the dealer picked them up, so I saw only the backs, and finally I got 2 glances of fellow cards. He stood on a hard 8 ounce and drawed on a hard 19. Second time, further scrutiny confirmed the fact that the dealer was peeking. If he wanted me to get the top card, he singled his new player. The new player termed as the anchorman to his stand. If he wanted the top card from me, for example, suppose I doubled down, he saw it was 9 or 10, he singled the anchorman to draw. An anchorman makes the dealing seconds unnecessary, which marked cards that even the peak would become unnecessary. The dealers could easily infer that my behavior formed in a long habit of whether I was going to double down, draw, stand, or split or pair. If thus useful art in casino blackjack to be able to play the poker face, an easier way to combat an anchorman is to wait until your turn to even look at your cards. In this way, you cannot possibly help the dealer who uses the anchorman. We moved another table on the other farthest from where we were. I saw that player already at the table that was at the right and occupying the anchorman's future seat. The word was passed with the deal, but the anchorman waited patiently with a few minutes for the player on the right, got up with the anchor plan, plopped down, and went left. The fun was over in the casino. Alternatively, the anchorman may be seated in the dealer's right. Then he stands draw according to the signal from the dealer with the name of the dealer, who turns in the next draw with the more desirable cards for himself with the entire table illusion of the dealer's superior cards. In contrast, the first sight, they use the first use anchorman, in which only one player seems to single out hard luck. We had several advantages in some of the anchormen and or the casino suggest me that Nevada, a state without seacoast, for the biggest Navy in any of the state of the Union. Alright, the gratuitous peak. When the dealer has a 10 up, he immediately checks his whole card whether he has a natural. When he has an ace up, he first asks the player if he wants insurance, assuming the insurance was being used. Only after then does he checks his whole card. When he has any other card up, with no reason for him to check his whole card before he turned to play. I have only on a number of occasions when the dealer checked the whole card when an ace was up before the offer of the player insurance. Then he tried to say actions manner to influence the player. If they had neither, they would not other offer insurance. They would rush the player. If they had no natural, they gave the player plenty of time. Even hinted that they, with their facial expression, that the insurance was wise. Once in a while, I have seen the dealers look at their whole card immediately when they had neither 10 nor an ace up, and then they continue to peek until they had found the card they needed, which they hold themselves by dealing seconds. Alright, mechanics on call. A card mechanic is a skill cheating accomplished by his ends by a sleight of hand. Some large casinos have their own mechanics working as dealers on the regular shift. Since mechanics are paid much more better than ordinary dealers, casinos which cheat will, for reasons economy, hire only as many as pay themselves by the extra revenue. Often there's only one mechanic per shift. One morning I was betting on $110 to $100 and winning. After a while, the dealer went off duty. His relief came in, and suddenly the pit boss rushed over the scowl that scolded the relief, sent him to another table, made our dealer stay on it. A few minutes later, another dealer, the pit boss, had been summoned to relieve our dealer. The new dealer was, according to the expert who was protecting me, new dealer was, according to the expert who was protecting me, a mechanic who did not see any definite cheating, only suspicious moves. But good mechanics can often conceal their move from the most of the skilled eyes, leaving only a few suspicious side effects. We immediately lost nearly every bet. At $10 level, we lost a couple of $100 over our winnings in a few minutes. We walked across the street at a smaller casino. One periodical with the boxes brought him into counting $5 to $50. We were ahead of the 20 minutes for the pit boss, grimly hostile. Then he made a phone call. The more time passed, he looked at our watches and saw that it was time for our dealer to get off duties. Yet he was not. In a city without clocks, always carry a watch to see if your dealers are being changed after what you observe to be regular length of time for a shift. At no other time, a break-in pattern indicates trouble. Our dealer had been on duty 37 minutes. 30 in normal casino. 30 was normal in a normal casino when a man is dressed in a white shirt and black pants like other dealers, but without an apron over that casino, hastened through a front door up our table and immediately deal with spotted him as a mechanic. With a simple smile, he purred and would gently would you like gentlemen like a drink? The pit boss became relaxed and in good spirits. A wave of the friendliness seemed pervade in grim, barren, mid-morning desolation of the place we left. Miscellaneous methods. There are so many ways the dealer can cheat that we can only give the brief as an introduction subject here. The interest referred to, the reader can study with a much greater detail on the many references available. 15, 20, 20, 36, 53, 58, and 66. Many interesting facts were also presented during the Senate investigation gambling in the fall of 1961 3042. Despite all warnings and frequency of which the dealers cheat with the number of casinos that are scrupulous hounds, other purposes the chapter is to make the reader acutely aware of the dangers of cheating, to give them enough knowledge so that in most cases he will be able to spot and change casinos before suffering a serious loss. It should not be evident that it is suicide to play in place that cheats, even with virtually no hope of winning. Avoiding cheats. As a practical matter, it's not likely that you would be able to actually catch much more of the cheating that you meet. The better cheats can only be spotted by the experts, sometimes not even then. How can you avoid serious losses from cheating? The best method I know of the paper route technique described earlier is now being widely successfully used. Here again is the idea to divide your stake into 10 to 20 equal parts. For example, starting with $200, you might divide it into 10 parts at $20 each. When you sit down to play, buy $20 worth of chips. Play until you either lose your 20 or double it, and then quit. If you are still playing it after an hour, quit anyhow. Go on to another casino. Return to the casino dealers. Return casinos and dealers you do well against. Avoid those poorly against. And this way, no one cheating hurts you much. This way, no one cheats hurts you much. You never play a cheat twice. Chapter 11. Can the cheating be stopped?